Okay, hi everybody, Rob here. Today we're going to go through flying the fly-by-wire A320 mod, A32NX. It's something I've been flying quite a bit lately as a commercial aircraft. It is a fantastic mod. It is completely free, which is crazy to me because it is such good value. There's a lot of very hard work put into it by people who know a lot more about flight sims and commercial airlines than I do. And it's been a fantastic way to learn a lot about that. Now, the other things that I have been learning about is a couple of other products, Simbrief and Navigraph charts, and trying to understand how those all fit in together to create a really interesting, more true-to-life environment for a flight sim and doing commercial flights than you would have ever seen before, pretty much. So I thought it was a good opportunity to go through, have a look at that, see how that process works, and do it from someone who doesn't have any flight background apart from flying in sims. And maybe, hopefully, you might pick up some tips along the way, a few things that aren't entirely obvious if you've come into it just like I have as an IT guy, as a gamer, as someone just kind of getting back into flight sim as Microsoft Flight Sim came out last year. So let's crank on through. The first thing we need to do is actually not be in the flight sim. We're going to set up our flight in Simbrief. We're going to do a quick flight today, and then we'll just go to cold and dark, start off to Takeoff, and maybe do the landing and some of the other bits in another video. But we're going to fly Canberra to Sydney, which is a pretty short flight in Australia. It's about half an hour flying time. It's going to give us enough to check everything out. Pretty basic airport, and should be fun. So this is our Simbrief. We're pretty much dispatching flights from here. There's lots of different ways to do things. It's also a really full-featured thing. In this case, we're just setting up one flight for us to fly somewhere to somewhere else. So let's go through and put in some of the details. You can put in airlines and more realistic flight numbers, etc. I'm just QF Flight 101. I've got my Qantas livery, which I think looks pretty snazzy. And we're going to take off from Canberra. And we're going to fly to Sydney. And a flight time isn't a big deal, departure time. If you're doing more things around dispatching and airline stuff, it gets more into that, so we don't need to worry. It's in UTC, by the way, as well, just to catch you out for people like me who are far from UTC time. We're flying an A320 today. All of this advanced features, we really don't need to change anything, and we actually really can't. In actual fact, one thing you might want to do is add some reserve fuel or things like that if you want to change around, how much your aircraft weighs to have a little bit heavier to play with that. I have my unit set to kilos because I've got my Flight Sim Center hybrid. So I have a metric units for everything except for altitude in feet, which seems to work pretty nice. Our scheduled flight time is actually out. I'm going to put it in for 45 minutes today because that's what it actually is. Our departure runway is going to be 17 and our arrival is going to be 34 left. Generally, these are set up automatically, but they can change depending on factors, and it does take into account weather and a few things like that, I think, so it's pretty smart. No big deal. We can set some extra kilos of fuel here if you want to as well. Our altitude is going to be set to auto, our cruising altitude, that is, based on our flight plan and some of the flight characteristics. And we can set some things like passengers, so we can specify counts. We can set our cargo weights and things. I like to set it to auto, just me. You put your captain name in there, which is pretty snazzy, seeing as I have not done anything to give me the title of captain in my life. And we get some routing. So we've got some suggested routes we can change around. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see that's what they look like coming out there. We don't have very many because it's not a very long flight, but we can change things around. Oops, zooming in. And we get a route distance. And we get an estimation of how much extra flight we need to do to fly that distance. So we can see this one's actually not super good. We're flying 38% extra distance as opposed to direct flight because we're kind of going a bit north and then heading east. But for a short flight, it doesn't matter too much. But that's just a nice little option if you want to have a look at that. Okay. That's all we need to do. That sets up our flight. We generate that guy. And we're going to use this as our, what we call a source of truth, if you're in an IT world. generate a briefing package, and we're going to refer back to this in all the other aspects of the game. So this is our thing. So we can see here it's calculated our cruise altitude to be 230. We've got all the standard things. We've got our airline and our flight number and our aircraft, and we've got some extra bits and pieces. So it's calculated fuel for us, for our ZFF weights, our takeoff weight, and a few other things. So we get our flight plan in a nice little section there, and then we get our paperwork. So this is you probably want to have a look and read this, how to read this flight plan, because it's pretty detailed, and this is what actual commercial pilots would get on a day-to-day basis when they're flying. There's a lot of information here. Most of it I couldn't tell you what it does, but we'll pick out different bits and pieces that are going to be useful. So there's a lot of fuel planning information here. We've obviously got our overview. We've got some wind and things like that in there. And so we can have a look at that. I would assume you kind of sign this off and hand it back to your airline at the end of the day. We've got effectively our route and how we're getting there. Oh, that's our alternate route, sorry. And how we're going to get back if we've got any issues. And there's our actual route down here, which is nice. The one thing, and there's lots and lots of things in here you can kind of read. There's some more details around, where all these kind of things are. There's your latitude, longitude, and bits and pieces. You can look at that in your own time there and decipher it. There's some nice little charts at the bottom here. We get some weather information. We also get a vertical profile, which I find is really, really helpful. We can see what our cruising altitude should be, and when we're kind of aiming to be there. Sometimes ATC is not going to necessarily give us the best climb and things along the way, especially if it gets busy on ATC. I've noticed it's not really great at doing that. It can be quite busy. So it's also always good to know where you are in relation to everything else in terms of what the plan is going to be. So let's hop into Navigraph, which is the next tool. This is a tool I didn't really understand when I first used it. I didn't quite get why it was useful. Let's click the From Simbrief button. We're going to find that button in a few different places, and it's going to be super useful. So first, look, okay, hey, we get a nice color-coded map. We've got some waypoints that are located on it. We can see different things. We can see, that it's got a thing there. But how's that going to actually be super helpful? We can see, first off, we actually have no approach into Sydney Airport. We've got runway 34 left here, which is this guy here. You can't see my mouse. It's on the left there, coming out into Botany Bay. But what we can do, and this is the first thing that I find useful, is we can have a look at the visual approaches into our runway. So we're going to do an ILS approach. So we come down here, we can select our ILS approach. And we're doing this is there another better one there? ILS 34, right, that's the one we want to choose. And we'll choose. Come from MDEV? No, we're going to come. Oh, that's 34, right? That's the wrong runway. No, we're going to do this one. That's what we want to do. That's right. And then we can also see our arrivals. So we can have a look and see what those guys should look like. So we're going to come up from Rivet 3 today. So in our arrivals, yeah, look, we've got that there, and it's going to give us a thing there. So we'll be able to see some other information. Hopefully, this didn't work before, but hopefully it'll work now in this demo. We'll see our plane on the flight plan through here. That's pretty amazing. But I mean, we get that in the game anyway, so it's not groundbreaking. But what we do get, which is really helpful, I think, is apart from general airport information, which we will use for some of our performance later, we've got all of our charts for each airport. And this is super handy. You can search online. There's different sites that give them to you, but this is pretty fancy in my view. So we're going to do not arriving there today. We're going to do a taxiway, so we can get airport information. And so now we've got taxiways, runways. We can use this as where we're unsure which airport, how we want to take off, where we want to start in the game, where we want to go. And then also for our taxiways, we've got them all labeled, so we can see what they look like. We can also pin this down to a bar at the bottom, and we can use that as time. We also have an overlay as well, so we're going to overlay that onto our map and see. Now that's probably not going to be super helpful for taxiways as we're taxiing around the airport. We can't zoom in any more than this, what is going to be super helpful is we can do some things like our RNAV departure. We can pin that to our pin board. We can overlay that onto our map, and that starts to become really helpful. That's one aspect. That's not too bad. When we get into Sydney, that's where I think it's going to be pretty useful. As we start having arrivals, there's our RNAV3 arrival. We can pin that guy, and our approach. So we're 34 left today. It's going to be this guy. We can pin it from there, and then we can overlay that. As we come in through, especially I find arrivals and approaches are super nice to have that. We can see, we're going to be 3,000 feet coming into this glide scope. We won't get a visual height here, but we will get a latitude and longitude that matches up, and that's going to be really nice. So we can have the map sitting here. We can see any of the other details. Hey, look, that's our localizer. We need to make sure that's dialed in. We can see any minimums and things like that we want to have onto on our map. We want to get our taxiway. Sydney has a crap load of airline charts. There's a lot of stuff going on. You can read those in your own time, but at least that's going to give us an excellent thing. So we're going to have 34 left, which is our runway here, and up on the left-hand side. Oh, sorry, on the right-hand side is our domestic area. So we want to come off probably B9, I would say, as we land. And having this actually, at this view, we should be able to see our plane as we actually come onto the runway, which is generally what the last thing is I turn up on one of our monitors here, which seems silly because you may want to see your approach, but less than 1,000 feet, you're pretty much going to be on the glide scope or not. So you're either going to be landing or you're going to be pretty close to, you're either there or you're not, right? And then from here, we can see where we are on the runway at any point in time to know which kind of taxiway we may want to turn off on to get the best, run into a parking gate and things like that. All right, so we've got all those pinned. We know where we're going to start, how we're going to depart, how we're going to arrive, how we're going to approach, and then how we're going to get at the end there. That's pretty handy in my book. I live in Sydney. I've flown out of Sydney Airport in real life the most out of any airport, and I don't fly too much. To be honest, especially with COVID. But for airports and areas I've never been to, this is super handy, just to kind of get an idea pretty fast of what's happening. Let's turn on moving maps, and as we load up in the game, we'll be able to see things. All right, so we've got the basics sorted out, which is good. Now, let's come into our flight sim. I'm running the latest update 5, I think we're up to now. And I'm running the stable branch of fly-by-wire 070. So let's come in here. We're going to come into Canberra, and here we go. One thing with Canberra today is that they're the way we take off. We actually take off not over anything that's interesting in Canberra at all, which is not uncommon because you don't want planes flying over, taking off over the city. But we're going to miss anything that's kind of interest in Canberra. Lots of people in Australia would say that there's nothing interesting in Canberra. It is nice to fly over something sometimes, I find. But we can have a look out the window, and we'll probably leave it at that today when we get to that point of the video. So let's load in. Take a coffee break there. And do you know that A320 can land in crosswinds of up to 38 knots, tailwinds of up to 15 knots, and something about Tuvalu as well? There's a population of Tuvalu can each buy an A320 if they wanted to, and fly New York to Paris. You're probably quite familiar with those at this point in time. All right, so we're going to do some cold and dark setup with this plane, which is interesting. Most of it's easy. It's this part down here, the MCDU, that's going to be the trickiest part. I'm not going to go through this properly in terms of checklists. I'm going to do a basic one that I generally use. It's not super realistic, but it gets us along the way. How much realism you do is up to you. This is my level. So we'll start top left and work our way around. So we turn on the navigation. It's going to take a few minutes to get loaded. Our crew supply of oxygen is our emergency oxygen for our crew at the front here. we'll turn on our fuel pumps. We're not going to do any of the fire tests. We can do those. They are mandated in the setup, but we won't. We'll turn on the emergency exits. We will turn up the integrated overhead lighting. We won't turn on any of the external lights, and we won't turn on our APU. We're going to start doing some fuel consumption. Let's turn on our fly pad. This has been improved a lot in the recent releases of fly-by-wire, which is fantastic. They've done such good work in it. And we hit the From Simbrief button, and look at that. We've got our flight plan into the Simbrief. This is just on our iPad here. This is not in the MCDU yet, but we'll do a similar thing. We get some weather information, which is fantastic. So 21 degrees. Look at that. It's actually warmer in Canberra than it is in Sydney. That's unusual. Canberra's pretty cold. We can come in here and use this for calling different services. So we're going to do our external power, and we're going to get the fuel truck over. And, oh, wrong one. We come back here. We can see our OFP's been loaded in. So we've got our block fuel today, which is the number we're looking for, is 5181. That's in kilos. We'll type that in, 5181. Is that correct? Yep, 5185 is actual fact what we wanted. And we can change this fast or instant or real. Let's do real, just because we want to. And we're going to defuel in our plane today, because we don't need as much fuel as standard where it's only a short flight. We'll turn up these displays as we go around, but not in any specific order, which is probably bad, but I don't have a pilot's license either, and that's not very good as well. We'll just clear these messages, like that GPS loss there. We can just clear that with the button, and we come in here and we initialize. So before we've done this, you have to link this to your Simbrief account in the menus, and then it can come through and get our details. Look at that, boom, QF flight 101, Canberra to Sydney. Let's come and initialize that guy. Initialize, and we get an uplink insert in progress, and AFC account flight plan uplink. So now if we have a look at our flight plan, there we go, our flight plan's loaded in. Let's come into MCDU again. We'll come into ATSU, AFC menu, and we can do, we've already got the weather, so we won't do that. You can get the weather and have it printed out, things. It's kind of nice. We could do a fuel load directly from here if we wanted to, but that's no fun. We'll do it through the flypad. We can do our payload loading, so this is our baggage and people. So we've got 170 people today. So let's load this, and then our gross weight went up to 67,200. Probably going to come back down a little bit. Yeah, 67,100 as we take fuel out. Let's have a look at our flight plan. We've got all of our parts in here. This MCTU is a little bit tricky to get your head around, but stick with it. It's worth understanding how it works. It's not. I think we're going in circles here as well, which doesn't help anything. But yeah, look, you got to stick with it. I'm an IT guy myself, and I find it tricky. It's not a computer in the sense that we'd recognize it. It's a flight computer. Anyway, so let's have a chat to our ATC. We'll just make sure we're going to get the airport, the right departure that we think we're going to get before we plug it in here. Yep, so we can get runway 17, which is what we thought. Okay, now we've finished our fueling. We've got this fuel page up, just comes up to confirm that. If we go to kilos, I think, yeah, look at that, maximum takeoff weight, our total, sorry, no, maximum. So we're actually, as you can see, far below our total. We could be a lot heavier if we wanted to. And I just clicked on something. That's good. All right. Oh, and I was distracted, so let's just do that. So we're going to get 7,000 feet. Let's plug that guy in at the moment before we forget, and we can finish off the rest of our flight planning and our things in here. So we're coming to our departure airport, and we'll plug that in. So we're going to see 17. Now we have our SIDs here. Effectively, we're going to match our SID from our flight plan, so it's column 1 in this point. And there's no transitions. It's a pretty basic flight plan, pretty basic airport to be taking off from. You take off from LAX or Heathrow or Toronto or anywhere in JFK, it's going to be more complicated, potentially. All right, we can minimize our ATC for now. We don't need him. And then we're going to get our departure, and we're going to pop the arrival in as well. So we haven't got this in here. Well, we do have it in Navigraph here. Navigraph is just a reference at this point in time. It doesn't actually do anything except provide a reference for it. So nothing is in the sim is looking at it directly. Now, we're going to be, what do we say, 34 left. Not uncommon for Sydney. We're going to come in via Rivet 3. And there's no vias for that. And we're going to insert. I've had this bug a few times. It gets to here and it will stop for a second. So I'm going to stop for a copy break and it will come back to us in a minute, I'm sure. It's still a bit paused. All right, there we go. Let's insert. Okay, so we've got our flight plan set up. If we come to our radio navigation, we haven't got our frequency in there just yet. And it should turn up in a minute there. If not, we'll program that in manually in a minute. So the last thing we need to do is get our performance set up. So there is a great little tool, the performance calculator. My performance calculator, which is gone dark on us. Just restart it here. This is how you know this is live recorded on my computer, is that things don't quite work all the time. This is a nice little free tool. That's the first time I've ever seen that. Probably just something to do with the recording today. Here we go. That's what it looks like. It doesn't look super fancy, but it does its job. So what we're calculating is our V1, VR, V2 speeds, which are just a visual guide for us to know when we're going to rotate, and V1 for when we're going to V1 and V2 as well, but not that they use that very often. And then our flex temp is the main one that we want to determine here, which is what our flex percentage is going to be. We don't need to use full thrust on this flight. We're not very heavy, we're not very fast, so we don't want to use toga. Save some maintenance. Not that maintenance is going to cost us anything in this game. So we know through Navigraph that our Canberra runway is 3,200 feet, just over. And we know that our airport elevation is almost 2,000 feet. And we know from our flypad, our flypad is going to tell us some weather information. Which is going to tell us our wind component is a little strong. We've got about a 13 knot headwind today. And our outside temp is 21, and our QNH is 1009. So our takeoff weight, in actual fact, we can come in here again, and we'll get our takeoff weight is 66,500. Our flat stepping is going to always be 1. Our anti-ice is no, 22 degrees. It's not going to be there, and it is dry. So we hit that calculate, and we're going to get our all-important flex settings. So if we come back into our sim and come in here, let's put in our V1 is this, so we can see the numbers show up at the bottom left, and we can click them in there. Okay, we've got our alignment with our navigation as well, which is good. So once we finish this, we'll be right to start doing our takeoff. 148. Our flaps are going to be 1 and 55. Awesome. All right, so we can do a couple other things. We can start up our APU. set up a no smoking. We'd have a 3-second delay between our master switch and our start. Don't know why, just heard that's the thing. That actually is a process in real life. And like we shouldn't really do this, but let's just do this now just because we'll get it out and done with. So if we come back down to here, we can see we've got the APU on the lower ECAM. It's one of the features of the fly-by-wire mod is all of these ECAM panels are functional, which is fantastic. In the default game they don't all work, and they will change context depending on what you're doing at any one point in time. Now, while we're waiting for that to be started up, we'll be a little bit realistic and get the baggage guys, we'll get the catering, and we'll get the people to actually come on board for a couple of minutes. Okay, that was good timing. Our APU is now available, so we'll turn the APU bleed on. We might have a look outside and see what's going on here, so we can see APU is started up. Some guys who are going to put some bags on for us, even though we've generally already loaded, so it's not going to change our weight, but it's, you know, it's nice to have a little bit of an effect here and there. We'll also set our QNH for the plane. The easiest way to do that is just hit B on your keyboard, and we'll just change to 29.1, and our altitude is now 1920, which is pretty much in line with what the airport elevation is, which is 1886 feet. Alright. Alright, so we've got things looking pretty good here. Our flight plan is set up. Our radio navigation, let's just plug in, look, we don't need to worry about plugging in our ILS frequency because we may not be getting there. Now we can see our doors and our oxygen. So that's our cockpit oxygen, not what we're breathing right now, but in the case of emergency, it's on the side panels of the cockpit there. We can see that. We can see our gross weight and some temperature there. On the top one, we've got engine information. We haven't started up our engines yet. We will in a minute as we push back. We'll get some details around seatbelt signs, no smokings, and park brakes. Our TCAS is in standby, which is what it should be set to, and we'll set that as we come down the runway. Now we've got our takeoff performance done. We'll get rid of that guy. Alright, let's have a chat to our ATC. Wrong button. We're not ready to taxi just yet. We haven't even pushed back, so let's think about pushing back. In a second we'll get rid of these guys. We can turn off the external power. That external power doesn't actually really do much in that sense. It just calls him over, which is it's not quite integrated perfectly yet. We can turn that guy off anyway. And I've got another mod here which I think is really helpful, which is the pushback mod. It's a fairly popular mod, so I'm not showing you anything new.
This is ground. Stand by.
These guys are going to have a lovely chat to each other. They're pretty friendly. Oh, we're still... we might have been a little bit fast here on the baggage guys, but they'll cope. I wonder if we can fix that up a little bit more. No, we can't. We just have to let them do their thing.
Okay, sir. The bypass pin is installed. All doors and hatches closed, and all ground equipment is removed.
Set up our PFDs while we hit C.
Parking brake set. Lifting the aircraft.
We can see on the right-hand side on the PFD there, we've got our flight plan looking pretty good there.
Stand by for pushback.
In actual fact, if we... Okay, and we want to push back to the rear.
To ground.
Go ahead.
We are cleared for start and push. Parking brake set.
Okay, cleared for push start. Please release parking brake.
Parking brakes are released.
Commencing pushback. You can start the engines in sequence.
It will start in the sequence.
Okay, so let's start up our engines. Super easy on the A320. I can't believe this is actually what you do in real life too. Turn to start, engine 2, engine 1, and are getting started up here. So we have to control the tug like we would in the standard version of the game without the mod, but we've got a little bit more options. We have a forward as well, which can be handy in certain circumstances, I think, as well. I never remember which direction I need to do. Is it this way? Nope, no. Opposite. We're probably a bit early on that too, but no matter. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. Let's hold that there. And we'll stop pushback.
Okay, pushback completed. Please set your parking brake.
Parking brake set.
Parking brake set. Lowering aircraft.
Ground. Startup is complete. You may disconnect.
Roger. Good engine start. Clear to disconnect. See you at the side. Have a good flight.
They're so polite, those guys, and having a chat.
Thank you and goodbye.
I imagine that's what they probably do all day long. They're probably pretty nice. The ATC guys are pretty straight-laced. We get our taxi clearance, and we're almost on our way. Okay, we'll acknowledge our taxi. I've got the runway blue lines on there because even though we can see that in Navigraph, we can have a look in here and see our chart for it. So we can see we're going up J and J, D, and up the runway, and FA and A1. We can see all those things. It's always nice just to have them on the system, on the runway. I think sometimes it's always a bit tricky. So let's so I have a Logitech Extreme Pro 3D Pro joystick. It is a cheap joystick, but it's pretty good to get you started. With the latest version of the fly-by-wire, it needs a little bit more calibration, I've noticed, to really get it good at that low, the low thrush setting. So it's a little bit tricky sometimes just to get this right for taxiing. I'm waiting to be able to do a little bit more with these, and maybe, you know, we're getting a proper setup, which is a difficult thing to clarify, because there's people with their own Cessna cockpits in their backyard as a proper setup. So what I end up getting, I don't know. Anything and more of an upgrade is a little bit expensive, but probably worth it. But this gets you going. If you're ever looking at trying to get into flight sim, this at least works. Is it like real life? No, but then neither sitting in front of your computer. Alright, we are taxiing far too fast down this runway. Let's just pull it back a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that today because he shouldn't be there to start with. Now, on our upper ecam, we've got a bunch of things we need to do. Yeah, so we continue anyway. We're going to do a few things to get ready for takeoff. So the first one is our auto brakes. We've got our lights on, which is our signs. We need to arm our spoilers and our flaps. So flaps I can do on my button on my joystick. Yep.
Roger, Qantas, Quebec, Foxtrot, 101 heavy.
Yeah. Alright, we need to set our spoilers. We will turn on our wind shear predictive. We'll set our TCAS over here. You can also turn off our APU bleed. Oh, go away. And we need to get our cabin check going. So you click cabin. The A320 real sim pilot does the all and forward. I don't know why, but if he does it as a real sim pilot, I'll do the same thing, because why not? Now, we'll negotiate this little chicane. I'm not Lewis Hamilton, and I don't have good toe brakes on this, which makes it tricky. So excuse my awkwardness as we go through here. We can see we've got flaps extended. We've got our ground spoilers, which look a bit funny at the moment. And once we get through this little chicane, we'll set up a couple more things, and we'll be ready to take off. Oops. I'll do it anyway. Takeoff test.
Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
We've got our flight director on. Our autopilot is off for now. We will use the flex detent to start with, and then we'll go back into the climb detent, which will get us into the auto thrust mode, and we'll fly with autopilot most of the way. So I can see on our right ECAM we've got our entire flight plan there. It's pretty hard to see most of it there. We'll set back to arc for preparation for takeoff. We should have some constraints there. I believe there's a couple of constraints as we take off. Let's have a look. Might see those on the down here as well. Yeah, we do. So we need to be around 3,200, and then we need to be over 8,000 as we get up higher. So I would expect to get a call shortly after takeoff to get a bit higher than that 7,000 initially. All right. So there we are. So we sneak up closer here. Take our Navigraph off. Oh, actually, you know what? Well, let's leave it on, because we'll see what we're doing here. And that's too close. Or is it? Oh, right on the line. It's effectively trying to tell us that we've got clearance anyway, which we do not. Be nice if we're on the center line there, but you know. We should have flown Tiger Air and been a Discount Airways, not Qantas, and then no one would care. Oh, we've got traffic on generic final. Alrighty. Alright then, we're cleared. I'm going to turn our flight assistant on for ATC, just so I don't have to talk to these guys again. Well, let's just see on our VFR map. Have anyone there? Oh yeah, he's coming through. So let's we have clearance, so we should be able to get on here and take off pretty quickly. Be out of his way. Let's see him yet. Alright, let's not hang around too much. We are ready to go here. It's on the center line. Let's go to our we're in our flex man. We can see 55. Alright, we are taking off. I don't want to disturb anyone else's game. As we get to 147, it will be our rotate speed. Like that. And we'll be ready to take off. Not quite in the detent there as we took off, but we'll do about 10 degrees as we take off. More. We've got good positive rate of climb, so we can take our gear up. We've got 15 degrees is pretty good. And then as we get to around about 2,500, we will set our autopilot. There's our autopilot.
1,000.
And we'll go from flex into our climb detent. There it is.
Canberra
And
departure Qantas Quebec Foxtrot 101 Heavy is at 3,300 feet, climbing
we're a
7,000
bit,
feet.
I think we're a bit quick on taking those flaps up there, but oh yeah, we were. Let's put them back down again. While we do that, we'll have a look around and see. Look at that. See our mate on the runway? Not really. Yeah. Alright, so we can see Canberra in all its glory. I don't have the full settings on here to really get all of that, so that we can see Lake Burley Griffin. Or if I take my Navigraph off, I can a little bit. There we go. So we can see we can see it over the chart where we are, which is kind of nice. Yeah, we'll take our flaps up there. And we are away. So look, we'll leave it there today. I think we're getting more information from the ATC there. We'll figure that one out as we go. But I hope you found that really helpful in understanding how that all works, understanding how Simbrief, Navigraph, and the Fly-by-Wire mod all come together to give you what I think is a really reasonably true to life, without having to go overboard in terms of how to fly, experience. So yeah, leave some comments if you like this, like it, and I can do some more. Thanks very much for joining in this flight today.